Hello, and welcome to the Azure Marketplace training on deploying Commvault on Microsoft Azure. My name is Adnan Cartwright from Agility, and I will be your trainer for this video. Before we get started, there are some prerequisites that must be completed for a successful deployment. You will first need to have an Azure subscription with the permissions that allow you to create resources. Now, before we get started, there are some prerequisites that must be completed for a successful deployment. You will first need to have an Azure subscription with the permissions that allow you to create resources, some Azure experience in terms of navigation, creating resources, and virtual machine deployments or IaaS deployments. Once you have and are familiar with the above, you're all set. Even if you're new to Azure and deploying resources to the platform, this video walkthrough will guide you step by step so you can gain not only the familiarization of the platform, but also the skill to configure and deploy the Commvault resource. With the deploying Commvault scenario, we will take an overview look at the Commvault solution. We will then take a look at what we will build and configure on the lab overview. Next, we will get hands-on deploying the Commvault VM in Azure via the Marketplace along with Azure Storage. And finally, we will configure the Commvault VM so that the server itself can leverage Azure Storage as a backup target. Commvault is an extension of your data backup. From on-premises with physical and virtual servers, whether they are databases, mail, and file servers, Commvault enables administration centrally from one console, enabling IT and different teams to secure and access mission-critical data. Now, data can be protected leveraging on-premises SAN appliances, and even into the cloud leveraging storage tiers like Microsoft's Azure Blob Storage. No matter the workload or technology, whether it is VMware or Hyper-V, even on-premises or in the cloud, Commvault not only protects your data with speed and efficiency, but securely as well, reducing administrative burden, maximizing an organization's infrastructure investment. So now we need to review our lab overview. So within our lab overview, we have a Microsoft Azure subscription. We'll then also create and deploy out our Commvault VM version 11 into the Microsoft Azure platform. And then on top of that, we'll also add the Azure Blob Storage and use it as a backup target so that we can take data from the Commvault server right into Microsoft Azure itself. So with that being said, let's head right into deploying the Commvault VM. So here in the Azure portal, to get started with a Commvault deployment, we'll simply head over here to the New button. And from the New button, we have the capabilities of searching the marketplace. So we'll just simply do a search for Commvault. And there it is, and we'll select that. And from Commvault, in terms of a publisher, here are the images that are available via the Azure Marketplace. So we'll select this Commvault image here. And it is a bring your own license image, which enables a 60-day trial in terms of getting started. And after that, it can be upgraded to a full version based on the license that you already have, or you can purchase thereafter. As you continue to scroll down, there is more information pertaining to the licensing, and then a screenshot of the dashboard that we will definitely get ourselves into. So to get this deployment started, we'll head and hit the Create button. And from the Create Virtual Machine blade, we'll give the name of this virtual machine as Commvault. And for the VM disk type, we'll utilize HDD. And for the username, we'll put in demo user. And we'll enter a password that we will use to gain access to this virtual machine. Now, when it comes down to the resource group and subscription, I am going to utilize the Microsoft MVP subscription that I do have here. And I'm going to create a new resource group, and I'm going to call this one Commvault _RG. I'm going to put this near to me, so the location is going to be East US instead of West US. And we can hit OK to that. And when it comes down to the size of the virtual machine, we do want to give this machine enough core to memory ratio so that it can actually perform the functionalities that it was designed for. So I'll come right down here and I'm going to bypass this 8 core one and come right here to the 4 core, 28 gigabits of RAM. That's more in terms in line of what we need. So we'll hit the select button there. And on the settings pane, on the settings blade, everything is going to be pre-populated for us. We can take the default straight through, but the monitoring we are going to disable as it's not really needed for this demonstration. So we'll hit OK here as well. And on the summary blade, it's going to give us that review of the validation in terms of the summary and options that we choose to deploy out to the Azure platform. And we can hit OK for this. And finally, on the buy blade, we are going to be charged for compute and storage, and the Commvault with the 60-day free trial is already enabled, and then of course you can bring your own license again. So we'll select purchase on this, and this will actually go out to the portal and start the deployment. Now this deployment can take anywhere between 7 to 10 minutes. I already have a Commvault machine already deployed and baked. Now one thing to take into notice here, or one thing to take into consideration here, is that when the machine is deployed and you create an RDP connection to it, you are going to go through the installation, which is rudimentary, and the defaults can be taken straight through. One thing to note is that the username and password, and then in this case the email address and password that you are going to utilize in terms of the registration for your evaluation, that needs to be notated as it's going to be utilized frequently throughout the deployment. So I'm going to head into that machine that we've already baked. So I'll come here, and here's our Commvault machine present and accounted for. And the first thing I do want to do, I already have the admin console pinned to the start UI, as well as the virtual server protect console. And I'm going to launch the admin console to get everything situated and done. And I am going to enter my email address. And this is created during the registration process. And I am going to log in. So now, when you get to this point, in terms of the Commvault deployment, you can hit OK to this window in terms of the evaluation mode, and you'll be prompted to this screen. You'll be brought to this screen. So we'll select Let's Get Started. And we do need to register the product as the first step, and then we do need to configure the email, and then of course add storage. So let's click on this link one more time. There we go. So now the same email address and password that we utilized during the initial configuration is what we will utilize here as well to keep things consistent. And we'll hit save to that. And the status bar at the top here will let you know exactly where you are in terms of the action. Perfect. And now that the registration of the product is completed, we now need to configure an email server. Now, you too can skip this aspect of the registration and go right into adding a storage pool. But until you complete this core setup, you won't be able to gain access to the admin console via the dashboard. So for simplicity, we'll put in an SMTP server. So I'm going to utilize Gmail's. And port 25, and it's going to be a test@gmail.com. And this information is fictitious. This is just to appease and to complete the configuration via the SMTP email. And then the sender email is going to be testadmin, and we can hit save there. Now, when it comes down to adding a storage pool, this pretty much is your libraries in terms of where you would like to have, in this case, a backup job be stored to, or in this case, where you like to have your Hyper-V virtual machines, the VHDs, or the the VMDX files be backed up to. So this one I'll just call target. And for the path, I'm going to choose out here to the F drive. I'm going to select the F drive itself and create a new folder and call this one library and hit the add button. And for the database path, I'm going to create a new folder and call DDB target and hit add. and I'm going to select a path for the storage pool here in terms of the library. And then for the DDB path partition, I'm going to select the same DDB target we just created. So I'll hit save on that too as well. And I can hit save here to complete the configuration. Perfect. Now that we've finished the initial application setup, it is going to prompt in terms of making you aware, is this a managed service provider environment or is something that you're utilizing for yourself? Whether you're utilizing it for yourself or in an actual managed service provider environment, you do have this choice in terms of saying yes or don't ask me again to finish off the actual configuration for the Commvault server. In this case, I'm going to select don't ask me again, and I'm going to come out here to the, call it the block menu because it resembles blocks, and I'm going to select that and come here to the web console. And so you can see everything here from the applications in terms of the Commvault, in terms of services that's available to you guys, reporting, virtual machines, forums, etc. But if I come back here to the admin console and I say complete setup, and what I want to do, I want to get it out to the point where it's reprompted me to see the entire dashboard. So let's close both applications out, well, both web connections out to the application, and come right back here to the admin console and log right back in again. We'll hit login. And I need to say finish this later. And there we go. I was trying to get it to prompt beyond that without hitting that link, but regardless. Here is the actual dashboard of the Commvault server itself in terms of a centralized pane for everything that this server itself is protecting, from SQL databases to different hypervisors to the virtual machines themselves. And then everything that pertains to functionality or jobs that are executed can be found here. Now, from a report standpoint and from a visualization standpoint, this is great. But let's dig a little deeper in terms of the Commvault server itself, in terms of another viewpoint where you can configure and get things situated and done. So again, we'll close out this web portal and we'll come right in here into the virtual server protect. We'll launch this application. And instead of connecting over the web server, we're connecting directly to the Commcell server itself. So the same credentials we've been utilizing is what we'll use here to log in. And we'll hit OK. Perfect. And now that we have the admin console via the server itself, you can see that we do have that target policy which was created during the registration process. But we want to take a different approach in terms of how we would like to configure this Commcell. We want to leverage a backup target, but we don't want to leverage an appliance that's on premises. We actually want to leverage a blob storage within Microsoft Azure. So let's minimize this remote desktop connection. And what we would need to do is head right back into the resource group for Commvault. And this is the one that I already have baked. So it's going to be CVRG. And I'm simply going to add another resource to this resource group. And within the marketplace here, here's the storage account that I actually need to get configured and what will be leveraged and used for Commvault in terms of a Azure library to utilize. So we'll select that and hit create button to get this all set and configured. Now for the name, it has to be globally unique. So I'm going to select CV disk in terms of Commvault disk, and the resource manager in terms of the deployment model, we'll leave that to its defaults. Now, when it comes down to the account kind, we don't want general purpose. We actually want to leverage blob storage in terms of leveraging block blobs, which are files in terms of video, in terms of Excel spreadsheets, etc. Whereas that page blobs will be for your VHD files and pertain more to IaaS deployments and virtual machines themselves. So when it comes down to the performance, we'll leave it as standard. It's our only option because premium is actually grayed out. And the reapplication, we'll have it set to locally redundant. The access tier, we'll have it remain as hot, and we are not going to enable storage service encryption, but in production, you will enable this. And as we continue to scroll down, we'll leave everything as is in terms of the existing configurations, and we can hit the pin to dashboard and create button. And this deployment is only going to take a few moments to get things situated and done. Perfect. And now that our container itself has been deployed, what we would need to do is gain the access keys, as they are going to be used to establish that communication from the Commvault server into this blob storage. So to gain the keys, you simply select this icon here that resembles a key, and we'll copy the first key, and we'll allow the access for that, and we can close this out. And now we can return back to our Commvault server. And what we would need to do first is come over to the left-hand side and select the CommSil browser, and we'll pin this for greater accessibility. Now, we do want to leverage the blob storage itself and not the physical storage, the disks and appliances that we've utilized and configured this far. So we'll come right here to storage resources and expand it out, and right here into the libraries. And there's that target library, which is the on-premises appliances that we've configured via the registration process. And we'll come right here to libraries, highlight it, and we are going to right-click this and add a new library, but we want to leverage cloud storage. So we'll select that, and we'll give this name of the storage Azure library. And when it comes down to the type, we are going to select the Microsoft Azure storage. And the service host name and the media agent name will remain consistent. And the account name is going to be CVDIS, as this resembles the name of the blob storage that we just created. Now we'll come here to the access keys that we just copied. We'll simply paste those in. And when it comes down to the container, we do want to identify the container in terms of where we would like to store our backup that we will initialize later. And we'll put it in a container called backup. And we can hit OK to this. It's going to go out, confirm those settings, and then add the Azure library, which it just did. And it shows that the manufacturer is from the cloud, and it is Microsoft Azure Storage. Now, the next thing that we do need to do now that we have this Azure library in place, we do want to take advantage of it, but we do have to put a policy in place so that we can. So we'll come right here to policies, and in policies, we'll come right here to storage policies. And I'm going to highlight storage policies, and then right-click and select new storage policy. Now, I do want to select in terms of the default, data protection and archiving. So I'll select next to that. And when it comes down to the storage policy name, I'll just call this Azure Hot. And hit the next button in terms of the configuration. Now, we're not going to be utilizing deduplication for this. In production, you will, in terms of reducing the consumed amount of space. But because we're in the demonstration environment, we'll select no and hit the next button. And the Azure library is what we'll utilize for the library for the primary copy. So we'll hit next. And the media agent is the Commvault virtual machine. Hit next. And we'll leave the streams and retention criteria for the storage policy wizard just to default straight through, and we can hit the next button here. We are not going to enable software encryption, and we'll hit the next button there. And again, we're not using deduplication, so we are going to uncheck these and hit the next button. And here's a summary in terms of the review of our selections, and we can hit the finish button to get things situated and done. So now that we have our storage policy in place, the next step is to create a sub-client policy. So I'm going to highlight this and right-click this and select New Sub-Client Policy. And I'm going to call this one Azure Blob. And the iData agent, of course, is going to be the Windows file system. And when it comes down to the default type and the storage policy, I am going to leverage Azure Hot, as we do want to leverage the cloud library and the Azure Blob Storage that we are creating. And we can hit the OK button there. Now that we've had the storage library put in play, we've had the policies and the sub-client policies actually applicable to the Azure Hot storage, we now need to come to the actual machine itself. So let's pretty much get things nice and clean up in terms of the hierarchical tree, and we'll come here to client computers and expand this. And here's our CVVM. And what we want to do, we want to execute a backup here. But before we can get that started, we do need to right-click the file system and select all tasks and then select reconfigure. Now, the purpose for us selecting the reconfigure, option is to take in effect the configurations that we put in place so that it knows how to communicate with that Azure storage as well as the policies that actually control it. So we'll select the reconfigure button, and that's now taken into effect, and we can expand this and select default backup set. Now, here's the default target policy that we have in play. I want to leverage this. So I'll right click this, and before I select backup, I do want to go to properties. And within properties, within our storage device, instead of leveraging the target policy, I want to change this to Azure Hot and hit OK on this. Now we're all set and ready to back up from this Commvault machine right into the Azure Blob Storage we just created. So let's kick the backup off and right click it and select backup. And I want a full backup, and I want this job to be initiated immediately. So I can hit the OK button to this. And it will look like as if nothing happened. That's a good thing. To view the actual status and progress of the backup, you would select the job controller. And then in the job controller, you can see that the status is running. And right now the progress is at 0. But if we were to minimize the RDP connection from the Azure portal and hit the refresh button, there's our backup container that we just created, as well as the first deltas of the backup going up from on-premises right into the cloud. So with our summary and call to action, just to recall in terms of what we've did thus far, we've actually deployed a Commvault solution in Microsoft Azure. We've also set up and configured the Azure storage, and we utilize Commvault and the Azure storage for backup in terms of our target policy and our target storage. You can find more information on more third-party images in terms of the Azure Marketplace via the azure.microsoft.com/en-us/marketplace link. My name is Adnan Katre from Opchility. Thanks for watching.